Hi, this is Basement Apartment DIY. Today I have a pretty important tool that I think will help you if you're as you're screening tenants, particularly if you're new to the process. What it is called an Applicant Qualifier, and what it does is it helps you go through all the various qualities of different applicants, and it helps you be really thorough. And then it scores the applicants based on what they've done in their background. I had a friend that rented to someone based on a really good landlord reference, and they came to find out later that this person was kind of a total fake, and they were actually using drugs, and they got late on their payment. Well, first they got late on their payment, and then they found out that other stuff after. But then when they moved out, it was kind of ironic. They said, "Okay, I can move out right away, but what I'm going to need from you is a really good landlord reference." So they were trying to repeat this process all over again. My friend didn't let this happen, of course. I don't see how the other landlord did. So what this applicant qualifier does is it goes through a lot of qualities, and so it would be hard to fake all those. Of course, credit checks is really important. Everybody does that, and in the resources below, I have a couple of good websites that you can go to check credit. Of course, it's a good idea to carefully check ID and social security numbers, and you can even verify signatures to make sure they're not faking that and you're not checking the credit of somebody else. A couple other resources I have down below. There's a really good local property manager, and he has a YouTube video where he goes through exactly how he qualifies tenants, and I highly recommend that. And then I have a couple other videos on how you can get your place ready, because the better ready the place is, the better applicants are going to apply. So I hope you enjoy this video. One thing I did want to mention is something on YouTube that I kind of get annoyed with is it seems like people are just talking about how they can make the best dollar out of real estate, which is good, but personally in my own with my own basement apartment, we rent to a relative that's been there 8 years, and most of that time we had two houses, and so here in Utah we've just gained tons of equity through that. So I really try to I give him a really great deal kind of to pay him back for helping me through those 8 years, and just because I have been really blessed myself. But no matter what your philosophy is, you really have to protect yourself. Personally, I've been burned by a couple of bad tenants and not been careful enough on screening at times, and so I think this applicant qualifier will really help you be careful and thorough. And the only other thing I had is when you're checking references, whether it be work or tenancy references, it's a good idea to give as little information as you can. So maybe tell them, this is Paul, and this person is going to rent from me, and then how do you know them? Or if it's their tenancy reference, okay, where's the property? So you don't give them the information up front, and if it's just their friend, the experts say that more than likely they haven't gotten together enough to really hash out a great story that well. Oh, one other thing is some of the qualifications you may not be able to get. Maybe the credit check you did doesn't have bankruptcies. Maybe it doesn't have evictions. Anyway, if you can't get that information, just throw those out, because there's plenty of categories. And I hope that helps, and I wish you well. So I wanted to give a real life example of how this applicant qualifier works. This comes from this book, landlording. And this guy wrote this book for many years. He started in 1975 as a landlord, and he died about 5 years ago. But like I said, he came up with this applicant qualifier. He's really thorough, and you don't have to use as many things as he has here. But I'll show you this how this works. So right now, my wife and I, she's a stay-at-home mom, and we've made about $45,000 a year the last 3 years. And with that, the house we live in, we live in a 3-bedroom house, and then the basement's rented. And would we be able to qualify to live in our own house? Now, I don't make a whole lot, but the good thing about, we've had our basement apartment for like 15 years, so we don't have a house payment, and so it really helps out that way. Can work part-time. But so with $45,000 a year, if you divided that by 12, that's $37.50 a month income you have. So and then a really common standard is your rent can be 1/3 of your income, your gross income. So that would come out to be $12.50 a month. Now, right now in Utah, a 3-bedroom house with a basement apartment might take off a little bit, but we would have a hard time renting our house for $12.50. You'd have to get a really good deal on it. So anyway, I want to go through this applicant qualifier and just see how we would qualify. Okay, first, disqualifiers. This is at the top, but I forgot to put it, so I put it at the end. So if you fail to provide the information, just your driver's license, social security card if they want that, or your past tenancies, anything like that, that would disqualify it. Second is if they've lied about something. Now, we probably wouldn't lie about anything on an application, don't have any reason to, so that wouldn't disqualify us. An eviction in the last 24 months. A lot of times people will do lifetime eviction would be disqualifier. And you can, if you use this, you can do it just whatever you want. I have it in a Word document that's available, so you can change it however you want. And then, like I said, three times the income of the rent price is. That's gross income. Gross is before they take out taxes, before they take out anything. So we might be disqualified on this one. And then, do they have the money to move in? Now, we have, large bank accounts, whatever. We have some pretty good money, so we wouldn't have a problem with that one. Are they prepared to take it when you want it? If somebody's looking 6 weeks down the road, you're probably not going to want to rent to them. A lot of times, if they want to rent it like 3 weeks later, a good trick is to like split the difference if you want to. So if they say they wanted to rent a month later and they take it now, well, they'd pay for 2 weeks. Well, a month is quite a bit, but you could do that. They'd pay for 2 weeks, and you'd let them out of 2 weeks. Then a verifiable source of income. So if somebody's got just cash coming in their bank account, unless they have a really good explanation, like they're a contractor or something, but it could lead you to believe there's something sketchy there that you'd want to avoid. Let's see. Felonies for sexual or violent, drug-related. He has that as a disqualifier. And then this is an interesting one. If their current place, he recommends that you go visit their current house. And if that doesn't meet scrutiny, it's just a dump, they have trash all over, whatever your standards are, your house is probably going to look a lot like that. So that's a really smart thing to do. Takes some extra legwork, but I think it's smart. And then conditional things. If you don't allow smoking or a dog, and he has too many vehicles, if somebody has 4 or 5 cars, we would pass these. I think we have 2 cars and a tent trailer. So possible we'd have to find a place to stash a tent trailer if there wasn't a lot of parking. But yeah, we'd probably qualify on that. Okay, so let's get into the qualifiers. You can see these down here. I'll put them down here. But adequacy of income. Now what he does is you have to make 3 times the gross income, but if you make more than that, and if each applicant can qualify on their own, like my wife could qualify and I can qualify, which we can't because we make barely enough together, then he gives extra points. So we would get 0 points for this. Okay? Because we don't make any more than 3 times the rent. The second one is stability of income. How long you've been at your job. I've been at my current job for 2.5 years. 2 gives the maximum amount of points, so I'm going to give myself 20 points on that. Okay. And actually I worked at, before we moved from to Willow where we lived, I worked same job, so maybe you'd count that as even more time. Credit standing, I think both of us are over 725. So he has here 690, gets you the full 20-point bonus. You could set that whatever you want. A lot of landlords only rent to people with 700. If you have a really nice place, that's something you might be able to do. 650, 600. But the good thing about this, like if somebody has a low credit score, say 600, but they have other things that are really good, then it compensates. Like they have things that are really good, compensates for kind of a lower credit score that you're not too excited about. One thing about credit scores, you really can't hide it. As long as you have validation that this is the real person that they say they are, then credit score is a hard thing to hide. Whereas somebody could maybe try to fake a landlord, give you a bogus person, but there's ways to combat that too. So the credit score, we have a good credit score, so we get 20 points there. You know, and if you really believed in credit score, you could award 50 points for a great credit score, and 25 for a pretty good credit score. So this thing can be weighted however, whatever makes you comfortable. Bankruptcy. Never had a bankruptcy. Bankruptcy gets you just negative points if you've had one. And it's interesting. A lot of landlords, I've heard this a lot. If it's just medical bills, they understand that a lot more. And that, medical can be so expensive, it's pretty understandable. Rent payment history. Applicant has never been late on rent. They could look at, since we're homeowners and never had a problem, but also we did rent about 6 years ago for a year and we were never late. So I'm going to give us 10 points for that. That's the maximum. Okay. Evictions. Some of these I think are a little bit redundant. Bankruptcy might be redundant with credit score because, bankruptcy is going to lower your credit score a lot. So maybe, anyway, you could take that out or not. But evictions, this gets into complaints. If they were given notices for, say they had really loud dogs that, that you had to notice, the previous landlord had to notice them for that. Things like that. But I don't think we've had any problem in that area, so we get the maximum 15 here. Okay. Now, rental history. Lived at the same dwelling. Like I said, we've been in our house about 30 months. And we lived at our previous dwelling for 5 years. So we get the maximum on this, which is 15 points. Let's see. So if they've lived at 2 different dwellings, for instance, in the last 24 months, they get 5. I thought it was interesting. If they've been a roommate, so not had their own place, but just a roommate and been on the lease, then that gives them 5. A roommate just bunking in with somebody not on the lease, they get 0. And never lived away from home, 0. Then landlord recommendations. Let's see, previous landlord would rent to the applicant again. So if they call their landlord that we lived at 6 years ago, I think they would rent again. The only thing bad about that is it was a 12-month lease and we left after like 11 months. So I think that was our only negative, but she probably would say she would rent to us again. So I'm going to give us the maximum 20 points on that. Okay. Rent comparison. Current rent is equal or greater than prospective rent. Okay. Current rent is more than 20% below prospective rent. Okay. I'm not sure what to put on this. We don't have a house payment, so technically our current rent would be, infinitely below prospective rent. But they probably wouldn't ding us too much for that. So I'm going to give just a 0 on this one. Okay. And then the last thing is makeup points. If in his scoring, he says that 90, if you're 90 or above, you're golden, you're good. 80 to 90 is kind of maybe, and below 80 is not acceptable. So say somebody gets 77. So he says that if you have the makeup points, the one is a cosigner, and it's interesting. They have to have above 700 credit score and own local real estate. Now, why is that? Somebody has a high credit score, they're not going to let anything bad happen to their credit. So if the tenant ends up defaulting, they've signed for that, and you could put it on their credit, and it'd lower it to 725, might go to 650 or even worse. So they're not going to let that happen. So they're going to pay you the money. Secondly, with local real estate, they own a house. You could get a judge. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, and depending on what state you live in, you could get a judge to put a lien against that house or something. The other makeup point is they give extra rent or extra deposit. I think it's interesting. Rentler, who we use a lot, I think 6 or 7 years ago, they had the deposit, and it didn't say OAC, I'm pretty sure. Now, all the time when they have deposit, it says on approved credit. So that just tells people that, somebody asks for more deposit, they're not just like trying to gouge them, because they say, look, it said on approved credit. So each one of those you could get 10 points. So let's see. So we had 15, 30, 40, 60, 80. And then we had 20 over here. So we had 100. So assuming we wouldn't get disqualified because our income's too low to rent our current house, we have more than enough points. It says 90 and above is good. But look at if our FICO score was marginal. If we'd be right there. So anyway, that's how that thing works. And like I said, the good things about this, you can weight it just what you want. Another good thing about it is a lot of landlords just have minimums. So what if they have a minimum of 580 credit score? Somebody comes in with a 560, which is pretty bad. Or their minimum 600, somebody comes in with 580. But they have a lot of other good things. They've worked at their job a long time. Then the advantage of this is it takes in the whole picture. You don't have to disqualify them just because they're a little bit low on one of the things.